285 pounds, High Chief Peter Maivia.
There are 5 wrestlers Peter Maivia will never forgive. Curious why? Well, he had some intense rivalries, and the things that went down in those matches are not just unforgettable, they're totally unforgivable. So let's dive right in and see what happened. 1. Miss Superstar Billy Graham. Peter Maivia and Superstar Billy Graham had one of those rivalries that fans still talk about decades later. Back in 1978, Maivia was working closely with Bob Backlund, and he was already a respected force in the WWF. But things took a dramatic turn when Maivia shocked everyone by turning heel. This wasn't just a small betrayal, it was a full-on shakeup. He left Backlund in the dust and set his sights on Superstar Billy Graham and the WWE Championship. That decision didn't just make him a villain in the story, it put him on a collision course with one of the most charismatic and controversial wrestlers of the era. The feud with Graham wasn't just about the title. It was personal, intense, and full of his heritage, using his Samoan lineage to intimidate and rile up Graham and the audience alike. This wasn't subtle storytelling. Every promo, every match, and every gesture was designed to make the audience feel the tension between the two men. And from what insiders say, Maivia took it personally. Graham's larger-than-life persona, his talk in interviews, and the way he dominated the ring seemed to push Maivia's competitive edge into a simmering resentment. In the ring, their clashes were brutal and unpredictable. Graham was known for his power, speed, and showmanship, and Maivia wasn't about to back down. The matches often became physical wars, with both men trying to assert dominance. Maivia's aggression as the High Chief was turned up, and he often fought harder, not just for the championship, but to prove himself against Graham. Outside the storyline, Maivia reportedly wasn't thrilled about how Graham carried himself backstage either. His confidence and swagger sometimes rubbed people the wrong way, and combined with the on-screen rivalry, it created a tension that Maivia couldn't forget. By the time their feud reached its peak, it was clear why Maivia might say he never forgave Graham. The rivalry pushed him to his limits, tested his patience, and forced him to face a competitor who was as confident and challenging outside the ring as he was inside it. 2. GBPOB Backlund. Backlund was not just any opponent. He was Maivia's protege, the wrestler he had been mentoring and supporting. At the time, Backlund was the reigning WWF champion, respected by fans and peers alike. But Maivia's famous heel turn changed everything. In one of the most dramatic moments of the era, he attacked Backlund, betraying his protege in front of the world. For fans, it was a jaw-dropping moment. For Backlund, it was personal. And for Maivia, it became the start of a long and bitter rivalry that would dominate the championship scene. The feud wasn't just about titles, it was about pride, mentorship, and betrayal. Maivia leaned fully into his High Chief persona, embracing a more aggressive style and a heel attitude that made the attacks on Backlund feel even more shocking. He wasn't just trying to win matches, he was trying to send a message. Every promo, every in-ring confrontation, and every attack outside the ring reminded everyone that this was no ordinary rivalry. Maivia's heel turn wasn't a small storyline tweak, it was a full-on personal vendetta. He challenged Backlund repeatedly for the WWF Championship, and each match was a battle that combined skill, strategy, and raw emotion. In the ring, Maivia was ruthless. He knew Backlund's strengths and weaknesses, which made the matches even more intense. Each clash was high stakes, with Maivia doing everything he could to assert dominance over someone he had once trained and supported. That added a psychological edge to the feud. Backlund wasn't just facing any opponent, he was facing someone who understood him better than anyone else in the locker room. And for Maivia, that understanding fueled both his aggression and his frustration. It was as if every match carried the weight of personal history, mentorship gone wrong, and championship glory all at once. Outside the ring, the tension between the two was felt as well. Maivia's heel turn had rattled the locker room, and his intense personality sometimes clashed with Backlund's disciplined approach. This combination of in-ring aggression and backstage drama made the rivalry unforgettable. For Maivia, This feud became one of the defining stories of his career. It wasn't just about winning the championship. It was about proving a point, asserting power, and showing that even the closest allies could become the fiercest enemies. The attacks, the matches, and the tension all made this rivalry a key moment in wrestling history and a reason why Maivia's feelings toward Backlund were so intense. 3. Victor Rivera. Peter Maivia's feud with Victor Rivera might not be as widely remembered as some of his other rivalries, but for Maivia, it was just as intense and personal. Rivera had once been one of Maivia's protégés, someone he had guided and trained in the wrestling business. That made what happened next all the more dramatic. After Maivia's famous heel turn, he didn't just target champions like Bob Backlund. He also set his sights on former allies like Rivera. To Maivia, Rivera represented everything he had once nurtured, and their clashes were fueled by betrayal, rivalry, and pride. Most of the confrontations between Maivia and Rivera happened in tag team matches, often with Rivera partnering with Backlund against Maivia and his chosen allies. In the ring, Maivia's aggression and heel persona came through fully. He was no longer just a mentor. He was a relentless competitor who seemed intent on proving a point. Rivera, who had once looked up to Maivia, now had to face him as a rival, and every match carried an emotional weight. For Maivia, Rivera was a reminder of his past connections and the complexity of relationships in wrestling, and that tension translated into some fiery encounters in the ring. Maivia's style in these matches was intense and strategic. He used his experience and understanding of Rivera's strengths and weaknesses to dominate, often turning the matches into a showcase of how far he had come since mentoring him. Every tag, slam, and counter was a calculated effort, and Maivia made sure the audience could feel the personal stakes. The feud wasn't just about winning or losing. It was about proving dominance over someone he had once guided, showing that the mentor-protege relationship had been severed. Outside the ring, the rivalry added layers of backstage drama. Rivera and Maivia had a history that made every confrontation more than just a performance. Wrestlers and fans alike could sense the intensity because it was rooted in real connections, past guidance, and the shift from respect to rivalry. For Maivia, this feud left a lasting impression. Facing a former protege like Rivera was a test of pride, skill, and emotion, and it reinforced why some rivalries in wrestling feel unforgettable and unforgivable. 4. Roddy Piper. Roddy Piper might not have been a direct in-ring rival of Peter Maivia, but that didn't stop tensions from spilling over in a way that made Maivia see him as an enemy. Piper's feud with Maivia's family, specifically his son-in-law Rocky Johnson and his adopted son Jimmy Superfly Snuka, was one of the most controversial storylines of the era. It wasn't just your typical wrestling feud. It was personal, provocative, and mark on Maivia that he never forgot. For Maivia, this wasn't just a storyline. It was an attack on his family and his heritage. Piper's provocations targeted the Samoan legacy and made things personal in a way that went beyond the normal rivalries in wrestling. Every time Piper taunted Johnson or Snuka, it felt like a challenge to Maivia himself, because he had always been fiercely protective of his family. The anger and resentment Maivia felt weren't just about scripted entertainment. They were about respect, pride, and seeing his family treated in a way that crossed a line. While Maivia often stayed in the background during this feud, the intensity of the angle meant he was heavily involved behind the scenes. He reportedly had strong opinions about how Piper carried himself, both in promos and in matches. Piper's style, arrogant, confrontational, and willing to push boundaries, was the perfect storm for someone like Maivia, who valued respect and loyalty. Each segment where Piper insulted or attacked members of Maivia's family added fuel to what had already become a simmering sense of personal injustice. Even though Maivia and Piper didn't have direct matches, the feud left a lasting impact on Maivia's view of him. Piper's actions went beyond the normal heel antics. They felt deeply personal and disrespectful. To Maivia, that crossed a line for Maivia. And that's a wrap for today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time. Bye for now.